Welcome. I'm Andy.
And I'm Lindsey. Welcome to E-commerce Marketing with the Pitbulls, where we try to cut through the noise and simplify digital marketing for authentic brands looking to make more sales online.
All right. So today we're going to be discussing our top 5 tips for picking a Google Ads agency for your e-commerce shop. I'm really excited to kind of dive in and we focus in on what we call craft brands. So hopefully some of these tips will be relevant, not just for, I think a lot of what we're trying to get at here is not just any old agency or for any old business, but, somebody who's really going to focus in on your needs as, business trying to sell really strong, valuable, passion fueled products online.
Yeah, and the way that we have set this up is Andy and I have come up with our own top 5 lists, and we have not shared them with each other. So it is a complete surprise to both of us what the other one thinks, which is quite fun because Andy and I think quite differently. So we're going to come together and share our lists and see if we agree or disagree, or if we thought of the same things.
Yeah, I can't decide if we're going to have a ton of overlap or all the things that I miss are going to be the things that you catch. So I think this is going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Before we dive in, how's your week going, Lindsey?
It's good. It's good. I will share a picture of this, but just this morning I had a battle with what is apparently called an assassin bug. So I was quite excited to be able to take a picture and put it on an app to find out what the heck I was looking at. And so I'll share a picture of it, but it does not look like anything I've ever seen before. And luckily, Bao and I escaped unscathed. So we're quite terrified of the bugs out here right now. So my good news is that I made it. I'm here recording.
That's awesome. Glad to hear. I can confirm I've seen this picture, and I would be not very happy seeing that.
How about you? How are you doing?
It's been good. Yeah, this is my wife and son are vacationing with the grandparents this weekend. So I'm home alone with Percy here. So it's been a nice kind of bachelor weekend at the house, getting a lot of little home projects and work things done. So very productive week.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a little bit shocking at first at how quiet everything is. And then after a while, you're like, when are they coming back? I kind of miss
exactly, it. Yeah, exactly. Need something to like drive my schedule now. The first day, it's like, oh, this is so great. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. Now it's like, well, it's about 5, about time to stop working. Like, what else am I going to do here tonight?
I love it.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I think the best way to do this will be to start at the top. So we'll go with our highest priority items. Lindsey, do you want to take it away and share your first highest priority tip for picking the right Google Ads agency for your e-commerce craft brand?
Yeah. So I think my highest priority for a craft brand when hiring a Google Ads agency would be to make sure that you find an agency that meets you where you're at in your technical and strategic knowledge. So this could include an agency that doesn't overuse technical jargon. It's not evasive when they're asked direct questions. If you don't know the answer to something and you say, what is this aspect of Google Ads? Or I don't really know how ROAS works, or I don't really know about this thing. Instead of being evasive or just saying, don't worry, we've got it covered, they actually take the time to meet you where you're at, explain a concept, and stick with you until you get it. I think it's so important for business owners, especially in the craft brands in the e-commerce industry, that if you don't know something and you're hiring out and you're sort of outsourcing for someone to take care of that you still are able to connect with them and understand what they're doing. Because I've seen many times where people have put complete trust in an agency, even though they're getting some red flags about doing that. They just know, I'm hiring you and I'm going to let you take care of it. And then if something goes wrong and they have to fire that agency or the agency walks away, they have no idea what was happening with the strategy. They don't know what they were doing. So finding an agency who works with you one-on-one, knows where you're at in your understanding, and communicates well with you about what they're doing is super important. So that was kind of my top one.
That's great. And I think my top one, probably kind of similar. I wrote down something a little different, but I think kind of right along that same line is taking the time to understand you and your brand and your specific goals. So This really is very specific, especially if you have the type of product that takes a little bit of education to let people know that, like, hey, this isn't just any old chocolate bar, just any old handbag. This is really special because, either the way it's made or it's, the founder's story or all of that different piece. It's really important that somebody's going to come in, take the time to understand that and not just give you kind of a cookie cutter solution. And I think especially when you're thinking about your specific goals. So obviously we're all looking to get more sales online, but it may be that, hey, you're really interested in developing some new customers. So you can take a little bit lower ROAS as you kind of nurture those customer relationships and get more sales lifetime. Maybe your brand doesn't really do a whole lot of lifetime sales. It's kind of all about that first big purchase. So in that case, maybe you have a very specific ROAS goal or an item that you need to target in the beginning. Maybe you need to move certain products that are either stale inventory or certain things that have a higher margin that you really want to focus on those particular product lines. It's important just that your agency is going to come in. And I think it's kind of an immediate red flag if they're not asking a ton of questions up front, about you, really trying to get to know you, really trying to, figure out what makes your brand tick at a deep level, kind of across all of those different components.
I love that you mentioned that, because this is our first instance of overlap, because that was actually my next biggest point was hiring a Google Ads agency that will understand your industry is how I wrote it.
Perfect.
One of the pieces that you did mention that I have listed was that having an agency who understands your industry and understands tools of the trade that will help support you in your specific industry. So being on top of the new integrations and the new apps and Shopify that are going to really support your industry or wherever you're at. If you're selling a particular e-commerce project or product, knowing that, hey, if you take this one app and install this in your Shopify shop, it'll help your customers reach this goal faster because they know components of your brand and of your product that work really well with these different tools. So that was just one piece that I wrote down that I love that we overlapped on that, but having the tools of the trade and having an agency that's up on that and can recommend different ones and know the difference between the ones that will work and support you and the ones that won't is so important. And that's how when an agency is so involved and knows the different industries and knows what works and what doesn't, they can just kind of come up with those recommendations really quickly when they hear a specific craft brand's problem. So I think that would be really important too.
Awesome. All right. So my number 2, and I think we touched on this here and there, but really focusing in on measured results. So I think a big red flag for me oftentimes is, agencies coming in and saying, hey, our goal for this campaign, or we're going to start running some brand awareness ads. To me, that always is kind of like industry speak for like, well, we don't really know if they're going to work or not. We're just going to run some ads and, hope for the best. So it's super, super important that, and not to say that that's not a technique that can be used at different points, especially with much larger brands, but especially as you're getting started, I think it's really so important that for every dollar you spend, you should know, what ads did that go into? And then, what was the outcome? How many clicks did we get from that to the website? And more importantly, of those clicks, how many people made purchases? How many people, added some items to their cart and then eventually left? We really need to measure every single thing that happens coming out of our ads. And that really, we always talk about ROAS being the primary metric, but just make sure that there is a metric involved, that you're going to have some level of accountability, that once ads turn on, the agency is going to be able to report out to you exactly what you're getting back for the money you're spending.
Yeah. And yet another instance of overlap. Technically, I guess my third piece here, I wrote down transparency. And so making sure that you as a craft brand are keeping updated on what the strategy is and what they're actually doing. So this could look like a lot of times we have meetings weekly or biweekly with clients to just update them on the strategy and the results. So it might look like that for you. It might look like a regular reporting or a dashboard that you can check in at your own leisure. But just having that transparency and the ability to have the conversation, because there's nothing worse than suspecting as an agency or as a brand owner that something's not quite working and you're getting told one thing, but you're seeing something different on your end. So being able to keep up with the agency and see what they're actually doing and what kind of results they're producing is super important. So I agree with that. I put transparency for my third one.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's really so important. And I think that kind of gets back to, trust, measurement, all of those things. Just make sure. And that's not only for the good things, hey, make sure they're letting you know when you're getting great purchases and things, but also being transparent when things go wrong. With our industry, a lot is experimentation and it's trying different things out. So if, every week you're only getting a good report or you're only hearing, hey, everything is roses, chances are something's missing. So, it's good to ask those questions and always look for that transparency.
Are you just stealing my list now? Because that was my next one too.
That was just going to be my tie into your first one or to your last one. My third point was experience with e-commerce specifically. So there's a lot of different types of Google ads. So it's not just hey, if we've started running Google ads for, a lead gen company, or, hey, I've worked with a local plumber and gotten them a ton of leads of, people who need home services work. All of that's a completely different strategy set, completely different campaign sets. So really important to know that your agency has a lot of experience working with e-commerce specifically. The biggest thing with that, with e-commerce, we do a ton of what we call product-based or feed-based, catalog-based ads. Those are all kind of synonyms. But basically that's where we're pulling, data directly off of your website, product images, product titles, and selling those in, Google Shopping. So you're actually seeing, hey, here's the product, here's the price, here's the title, all of that information, and the user clicks through. Those are particularly successful or a really effective campaign type on the Google, in Google. And it takes there's a whole different strategy around that, kind of managing that product feed. There's a lot of technicals around how you pull that data off of the site, clean it up in any way that you need to, making sure that you're kind of optimizing titles for whatever platform you're running on, all of those different things. But just make sure that your agency has some experience working with e-commerce.
Yeah. And to kind of tie it back to the point you made previously, one of mine was honesty and being upfront when something isn't going well and making sure that they have a plan to combat it or to support it. So just like you had mentioned, if it's always coming up roses, it's likely not the actual case. So, but I think the bigger thing that speaks to an agency's trust and capability is that if something is going not as well as we'd hoped, that they recognize it, they call it out, they let you know, they're completely honest about it. And then they have a plan of what might work instead, or give you a couple of different ideas on what you could try instead. It's not great to just bring up something and say, this isn't working, and then you figure it out and tell us what to do. You want an agency that takes charge and sees what's happening and says, okay, here's what's going wrong, and this is what we plan to do about it, or these are the suggestions we have to do something about it. And that way, since you've outsourced it to them, they are keeping an eye on the problem and they're the ones working on it, which is really the whole point of hiring an agency to begin with, is that so you don't have to really worry about it and you can check in and make decisions, but they're really there to take care of it, especially if things are going south.
Definitely. Awesome. So my next point, or point number 4 here, is automated strategies. So in Google Ads, there's been kind of a big transition really over the last, say 10 years, but especially in the last, 3, 4, 5 years, moving from what we used to call manual bidding strategies. So this was, for every single ad, you're going to specify exactly what the ad looks like, and you're going to tell Google exactly how much you're willing to pay for it when somebody searches this exact keyword. But now a lot of that has gotten much broader, and it's great because we're putting a lot of those decisions onto Google's machine learning engine, and we're getting a lot better optimization, a lot better results by basically telling Google, like, hey, they can search for this keyword or some keywords like it, and hey, the ad should look like this, or have a couple different variants that you can use in different situations, and our bid can be around this area, but essentially, you can bid up or down if you think that this particular customer is more or less likely to drive us good results. So go ahead and toggle kind of all of those different factors with our end goal in mind, our end goal of getting purchases and, perhaps getting purchases at a particular margin. So that's a big strategy that people need to have in their tool bag. I'd be very surprised, or I would say I should be very surprised seeing agencies today that aren't implementing it. But we do inherit clients from other agencies from time to time where they come in and none of those strategies are implemented. So make sure that as you're interviewing an agency, talking about it, you should be hearing a lot about kind of automated bidding strategies, broad match or phrase match keywords. That's kind of the word on the keyword side, or responsive search ads on the search side.
That is a really great call out. And it's not something I had written down, but I think, yes, I've heard so many times where clients are coming over and saying, well, my old agency said not to use any of those because it's so much better to have manual control over everything. And it's just not how we're doing things anymore. Every product on every ad platform is moving towards more automation. And, there's always going to be arguments over whether that's good or bad, but to just completely not use those ad types at all is going to do you a disservice. So I think that's a really great call out.
Definitely.
Well, I guess then it's my last one, number 5. So I wrote down being willing to walk away if it isn't working, and what you can look at for an agency if this is the case. So not all agencies are going to be great fits, and sometimes you have to try a couple to really find one that works well with you. But for the many horror stories that I've heard from clients, if you find an agency that sort of holds your accounts hostage, talks down to you, tries to bully you into buying more hours or re-signing on a package, for sure that's the agency to walk away from. Look at one that does not mind having a clean break. We can understand in being professionals that sometimes it's just not working. We're not the greatest fit. So we always wish our clients that walk away the best of luck, and we're always here to help if they decide to come back, which sometimes that happens. So find an agency that will work with you in that way and not one that will hold your accounts hostage. I've heard this many times, and every time I hear it, I can't believe people do this, but yeah, make sure you own your accounts and you have them secure from an agency. So that way, if they do turn out to be pretty petty and you decide to walk away, you'll at least have that security.
That's so important. And that's a point that I missed. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So I think around that, like you mentioned, holding accounts hostage, the big thing is you really need to have your email needs to be an admin on your Google Ads account. And one of the big things you can kind of, you'll know to see is that they should be asking you to put your credit card in to pay for the Google Ads. So essentially it's your account, your credit card, you're obviously paying them a management fee, but outside of that, the actual fees paid to Google are coming directly off of your credit card. A lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes agencies will have a little bit different structure where they'll say, hey, no, we're just going to invoice you for everything, for our management fees and for the ad fees that get paid to Google. That's bad in two ways. One, because you lose that transparency. You don't really know how much was paid into Google on the ads themselves. You just kind of have to trust the agency. But more importantly, that means that the agency owns that ad account. So if you go anywhere, good luck. You can't really switch from one agency to the next. And the second point I wanted to add on that, one, just that it's so important that, you have that transparency. Everything that we're doing is, experimental. So it's very easy that you could, we get started. The first thing that we're doing when we're setting up is seeing, is Google Ads going to work for your specific company? Anybody who tells you that, hey, it's guaranteed results, that's incorrect. Like, it's absolutely for your specific company, where you are, there's so many different factors involved. We want to have a strategy where we're coming in and we're testing and figuring out pretty quickly whether we're going to be able to make this work or not. And ultimately, if it's not going to work, it should be an amicable breakup. And, maybe it's not necessarily even that agency is bad for you or that they're providing bad service. It's just that, this strategy or Google Ads isn't working for your specific situation. So with that in mind, another big thing to be aware of is kind of long-term contracts. So I've seen a lot of times where people will sign 6-month, 1-year agreements. And sometimes there's not a ton you can do about that. I mean, there is a lot of setup that goes into these accounts. So sometimes, agencies will say, hey, well, if we're going to put all the effort in to set up your account, we need you to stay with us for 6 months. Not to say that that's automatically wrong, but just bear that in mind that, hey, results aren't guaranteed and you're going to be testing something out, it's very possible that after 1 to 2 months, you realize this just isn't working out. So if you're on the hook for especially expensive management fees over the course of 6 months or something like that, that can really start to eat into just throwing bad money after a particular problem. So month to month is definitely the best. But if you can't get that, I would say try to keep that contractual lock-in period as short as possible.
That's an excellent point. And I think just kind of speaks to once you're establishing a relationship with an agency and really nothing about them except what they're telling you, and maybe that you see some reviews and you think, okay, this sounds great. But if you're locked in with them for 6 months to a year and it turns out you find out it's not all that it proposed to be, it's a really terrible position to be in. So especially if you're just getting started or you're just trying things out, it's so much better to do month to month. That way you can have a clean break and walk away and maybe invest in something different if you need to.
Definitely. And my last point here, number 5, is making sure that they have a recognition of where Google Ads fits in the broader strategy. So again, I think that kind of goes back to hey, there's no guaranteed results or there's no, silver bullet here. It's all experimentation. And we think of it as experimentation inside of Google Ads with, hey, which campaigns are we going to run? What type of products are we going to advertise? Are we going to bid higher or lower on particular things? But even outside of that, how Google Ads fits in with your email strategy, how it fits in with what you're doing on Facebook or Instagram, all of these platforms are working, not only separately and driving results on their own, but also in conjunction with each other. There's a lot of crossover, different strategies where we can be, especially between collecting email and then feeding those emails back into Google, or using Google Ads in order to collect more emails. There's a number of different things we can do, kind of cross-platform. And ultimately, I think that just kind of gets back to that transparency piece. You want somebody who at the end of the day is going to be able to say, Google Ads really isn't, the right solution for you. Maybe you should be doing more on Facebook or more on email, or, somebody that you can trust when they say, hey, just so you know, Google Ads is really outperforming right now. I see that you're spending a bunch of money on Facebook or one of these other platforms. Maybe you should think about rolling some of that into Google. So that's where you need to have that, transparent, open, honest relationship. But just make sure that they're taking a look at kind of a broader digital marketing strategy, not just, hey, here's the one Google Ads campaign I'm going to run for you.
I really love that point, because I think we have seen before where Google Ads is doing really well for a particular client, and it's just one piece of the puzzle, and they may be really hyper focused on Google Ads because it's, outperforming everything else. And we as an agency will take a step back and say, well, let's look at all the other pieces that you're doing, and maybe we're not running them and we're not managing all of that, but we can at least take a look and give you some advice on what you can focus on next, so that you're not putting all of your eggs in one Google Ads basket, which we know, as much as we love and run Google Ads, is not a great idea for a business to have everything hinging on just one piece of the puzzle.
Perfect. Well, that's great. I think we've got a really nice list here. I think hopefully by the time we get this published, let's get something up on the screen where we have our points. Hopefully, I think a couple of these can probably be consolidated down. But I think, my big takeaways, and Lindsey, I'll let you add on yours as well if I miss anything, but kind of at a very high level, I think really taking the time to understand your business, your industry, your goals, and making sure that they're crafting a strategy that's very specific to, what you're trying to get done. I think experience in e-commerce, making sure they kind of understand the tools of the trade for e-commerce, and specifically e-commerce with businesses like yours, and that they have experience doing that. And then finally, kind of transparency and making sure that they're going to be really upfront with, kind of what's going well, what's not going well. You got to have some level of trust here. And obviously, starting a new relationship with a brand new agency, it's tough to develop that upfront. So some of the things that you can do are making sure that you protect yourself, making sure that you're owning your account, making sure that you're not signing these really long contractual periods. Those are all some good items. Did I miss anything, Lindsey?
I don't think you did, but I did just kind of want to underscore that it is tough out there for businesses in e-commerce craft brands to find an agency that they can trust. Unfortunately, in marketing, there are so many scams and con men out there. So I know almost every client that I've worked with has been burned in some way by someone trying to scam them over. So I think the points that you laid out can really help safeguard you from that. And just good luck, and come see us if you need help in finding a good agency.
Awesome. To that point, if you're ready to take the next step in your digital marketing journey, please go ahead and check out ppcpitbulls.com. There you'll find our assessment checklist. That'll help you kind of simplify, figure out where you're at, and specifically what your next best step is. You can also go ahead and just schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with Lindsey and I. There we'll talk about kind of where your business is at, and where you need to be going. And that's all free. That's all your information that you can, either work with us or take somewhere else or do yourself or whatever you'd like to do. So I think those are some great options. If you're ready to take the next step and you want a little bit of guidance or just not quite sure what to do, come on over to ppcpitbulls.com. Of course, if you like what you heard today, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Sure, we'll come up with a better way to put that, but then you can get notified when we launch new episodes and hear all of the great content that we're trying to put out here for you.
And we will see you all next time. Thanks for checking us out.
All right. Until then.